Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we break down the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. This is the last of our hiatus episodes. You may notice that we've skipped a few, right, Pete? We were going to talk about
Did you
all
notice
five.
we skipped a few?
There were 5 TV movies from the Incredible Hulk TV show. We did, we just ran into scheduling issues. It got a little tricky trying to get all of that done.
I would just like to say, for the record, I recorded my half of all of them, and it's sitting in the vault. And at some point, Andy may choose to go fill in the blank.
Just fill in the blanks for my half.
That's right.
That would be great. But we did want to get one more hiatus episode in because we are gearing up to have the Incredible Hulk season of the Marvel Movie Minute begin, and there's a bit of a change, and this is pretty exciting. As I said, Pete and my schedule, it's been a little crazy trying to get everything done, and so we reached out to some friends, Kyle Olson and Rob Cabasco, who you may have heard Kyle on the Iron Man episodes talking with me about that film, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We'd love to chat about Hulk and jump in on this." So let me welcome him. Hey guys.
Hey, this is Kyle,
and this is Rob.
So we started talking online because we do the Road to Infinity podcast, which is Marvel movie MCU focused. So we go through all of them, and so we've done a rewatch of all of the movies. But it turns out that while we're doing our news episodes, next year is kind of a quiet year for Marvel. So when we were talking to you guys, we thought, well, our schedule actually got a lot lighter because there's only 2 movies coming out in the entire year, plus maybe some television shows. So we thought, hey, this would be a fun thing to step into. Plus, I had a lot of fun doing my part of the Iron Man 5 minutes talking about Tony Stark taking his armor out for his first spin around the block.
Yeah, it was like the first, the Mark II trial.
Those are
right?
some sweetheart minutes. Right. Sweetheart minutes right there.
Yeah, I was glad I got to get in there. I can't believe nobody else tried to get in there.
Well, I am thrilled to have you guys here and to introduce you to all the listeners. I guess I can say I'm thrilled to chat with you guys about Ang Lee's Hulk. Are we thrilled?
Well, this is a little bit of trial by fire. Like, we've seen the Incredible Hulk and can talk a lot about it, and then you make us watch Ang Lee's Hulk before we get the job.
Oh, I know.
It's a little bit of hazing, guys. Seriously,
it is a little bit.
And here's a funny problem is that I realized watching this, I had never seen this before.
Really?
I have an excuse. We were talking about this before the show. This movie came out 4 months after my daughter was born.
Oh yeah, you were in the bubble.
The weekend of my wife's birthday and my first Father's Day.
Oh wow!
So I never got to the theater to see this, and I think I've only seen parts of it like on whenever it was on like Stars or something. Whenever I had a subscription to that, so this was completely new to me, and wow,
so good, right? We really are grateful that we gave you this opportunity to revisit a little bit of history.
Boy,
well, it's really interesting because I mean it took a long time to get this made. I mean, they were really trying to get this made since the last of the TV movies, which was 1990, which was the trial of the Incredible Hulk. They were trying to get something off the ground, and Gale Ann Hurd had been involved kind of the whole time. And a variety of writers and directors just kind of came through, and lots of different scripts, and some people who seemed to appreciate Hulk more and some people who didn't really seem to understand the character. There was a point where one of the writers was fed up because he felt like the people at the studio wanted it to be like a Jim Carrey comedy type of project. Oof. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, why was that a direction?
I think there must have been an executive floating around, because I remember hearing the same thing about there was a Green Lantern movie that was supposed to be a flat out comedy. There was a Batman movie that was supposed to be a flat out comedy. This guy must just be going through all the studios going, guys, have I got an idea for you?
Right. Shake things up a little bit.
So then what they ended up with was a guy who walked around just saying, I want to make a really angry movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
Introspective. We want to have a lot of just thinking, just watching people think.
Oh.
That's what people want from a Hulk movie.
And we want to put one of Australia's greatest comic actors in the lead role.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Until funny people, I had no idea Eric Bana was funny.
Yeah, he's a funny dude.
Like because I saw this was the first thing I'd seen him in, like most Americans, I think, and I thought he was just a dramatic actor. Between Chopper and this,
yeah.
Well, Chopper is what Ang Lee saw him in, and that's like really kind of what got his name out there, because I mean that's a very much more intense sort of film, and it fits with, I guess, the anger that you get here. Right?
Well,
I mean,
I need to say
it feels
something.
a little bit.
I need to say something
angry.
Controversial, and I'm going to go ahead and get it out early because I'm the guy who liked Rise of Skywalker. Are you ready? Here you go. Eric Bana makes a pretty good Bruce Banner.
Oh.
The problem is, the script is unperformable.
You know, here's the thing. Ang Lee, I like Ang Lee. I think he's a really interesting director. He's done a lot of really interesting movies. You know,
he's hard to pin down.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Ang Lee, and I think this is why they wanted him to come on board, is he is a director who never wears the same hat. You know, he always likes to shake things up and do something different. And that's fantastic. You know, I mean, he's done everything from costume dramas to you know, just heavy period dramas to Westerns to kung fu movies. I mean, he's all over the map with his sorts of storytelling. And I think that's exciting. And I think that, you know, I think that all the intentions were there with what they were bringing to Hulk, as far as trying to find a filmmaker who could bring a little bit more to the story that wasn't necessarily just kind of a comic book character movie. I just don't know if it ended up kind of, if all of the different pieces kind of came together in a way that worked. I mean, I get where they were going, because I mean, there's a really dramatic story that they came up with. Kyle, you'll probably be able to correct me, with Hulk when his dad was introduced as kind of the big bad in his life. I think that came out in the 80s, that storyline.
So yeah, that was in Peter David's run.
And that definitely kind of fit with something that I can see Ang Lee and James Schamus kind of coming, like attaching themselves to, really gravitating to something that where they can have a real heavy story involving family conflict and kind of imbuing this comic book movie with a lot of that heaviness. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't mind the psychological exploration that they do here, but it sometimes feels like they're at odds with what the movie's trying to do.
Yeah, I think Ang Lee could make a fantastic comic book movie. This isn't it. And I think part of the problem was the character he chose. Because when you have the name on the marquee that says Hulk, or Incredible Hulk, or Amazing Hulk, or whatever adjective you want to put in front of it, there's a certain expectation that goes along with it of a big green guy that's going to tear stuff down. And having that married with this deep psychological internal struggle, fathers and sons and that stuff, I don't think it matches very well. I think he probably could find another superhero who's much more psychologically damaged to do this one, as opposed to the one who gets green and knocks down buildings.
No, I think that probably is true. And I feel like, I mean, on rewatch of this, because I mean, I've seen this a number of times over the years, and just on rewatch, it really struck me this time, and like how many kind of flashbacks we had, or dreams that we had of Bruce remembering his childhood and all of these things that just kind of, it just felt so heavy. And I'm just like, gosh, I don't know if this is really helping the story move forward in any way. And it was, I don't know, just
there are multiple sequences of dreams inside of dreams, or flashbacks inside of dreams. And that, as soon as you have the Russian nesting dolls of flashbacks, you like totally lose the story. And I think that's one of the problems of this movie, is that for over 2 hours, it feels like a montage. It never kind of comes out of the credits. The momentum that they build in the credits, which I think actually is, I don't know if this is telling. I think the opening credits are some of the strongest material in the film. That they actually, like, they try to tell you, here's what we're doing here. Here's the backstory of the scientist, David Banner now, and they bring us in, and it just never gives me anything to really hang on to, right? Any sort of emotional hook.
This was during the period where they really felt they had to explain everything as well. And that opening thing is like, why is he green? Well, we're going to tell you. Why does he regenerate?
Yeah.
We're going to tell you. Like, they go down it and go through pretty much every animal in the animal kingdom that adds up to
okay, but so here's the thing, though,
Did we
Kyle.
need
I don't
that?
know if we needed that, or if that's something that we don't need with the gift of history now, the gift of the MCU, with the gift of all these movies. I think there is really something to be said for Ang Lee's approach at this time, where we still just needed to enculturate folks about what they're getting into, about how they build this character, how they, what people care about in this universe. And so I didn't have as much of a problem with that. I certainly would if they made this movie now. I don't need to see the starfish. I don't need to see him breaking the sea cucumber.
Yeah.
Starfish. Okay, so having never seen this, the whole opening sequence of telling him the story. One, I literally just sat there and my mouth was open and I was like, what is this? Right? Because take the nuance. Okay, starting a movie, a comic book hero movie, starting it with this very deep family, trauma story. Compare that to what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Right? Like, so much better storytelling, so much more emotional and not comical, just very heartfelt and real. So that whole thing was just crazy. The thing that got me is, though, and I know you had the Star Wars reference, which is great, because here's what bothered me. This whole thing is crazy, right? And I'm sitting there going, what is going on? We have a time jump. Somehow Kate McKinnon went back in time because his stepmom that talks to him before he goes off to college, it's Kate McKinnon when she's 65. I literally couldn't get past that. So I'm sitting there going, wait, how did that happen? But the best is when we get to the first moment between Betty and Bruce, which I didn't even get that he wasn't even known as Banner until he even said it, right? Okay, I literally had a flashback to episode 2 because the whole way that scene is acted and the whole way they're entirely acted throughout this movie is Padme and Anakin from episode 2. Her first words out of the door are, I hate them. And I literally sat there and I even made a note. It was literally like I expected her to say, I hate sand. It's everywhere. I don't like it. And it's just so wooden and so weird. And you're right. I mean, the script is unmanageable because no one talks like that.
No one talks like that. This is one of those challenges we've talked about before, and I can't remember who it was, Andy. Was it with like The Fifth Element?
Luc Besson?
Luc Besson movies. That there's something about the translation that just doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't sound natural in an English language movie. And I wonder if there is some Ang Leeism that we're hearing that would sound great in Cantonese. I don't know. But I just...
Well, I mean, that's saying that he wrote the script, which he didn't, so...
I think that there is an issue with just hearing what sounds wooden and being able as a director to say, that's not good. That what you're doing there that I'm capturing on film is bad. Let's do it better. Let's find new, different words.
I think he got what he wanted, though, because everyone is playing at the same level. Like, everyone's at a 3. Like, they're all, like, except for Nick Nolte, who's playing at a 15.
Yeah.
He's always playing at the Nick Nolte level.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Nick Nolte just has his own set of... But every single person, except, like, they'll go up to maybe a 5. Like, that's your Josh Lucas. And maybe a couple of Thunderbolt Ross scenes, and that's about it. Everybody, like, because it's like all very sedate. It's very, even like the Hulk himself when he's out there, very rarely does he actually show any expression of anger on his face. Now I understand ILM we're still trying to figure this stuff out, but most of the times he's just sort of looking around like, okay, yeah, so I gotta smash some jets, gotta smash some tanks and throw some guys around. All right, like he never really seems angry about any of it. He just needs more mildly annoyed.
I feel like that comes from, I mean, I know that they picked Ang Lee for a lot of reasons because he can direct really interesting things, but I just feel like it's just like, I don't know if I completely agree with your push on that, Pete, because I feel like it's Ang Lee directing an Ang Lee movie, but I don't think that necessarily works as a comic book movie, and I think that's the misstep.
I think we're making the same point.
Well, maybe, but I mean, I think these actors are doing a great job in an Ang Lee movie, but it just doesn't it doesn't necessarily translate properly. And so, in turn, when it's coming, the comic book language is coming out of them, it's not making any sense to me. So, it's frustrating. And I mean, I think there are some solid elements in here. It's just I feel like the script is just it's troubling.
We're in violent agreement on the script thing. My question for you, Andy, is that, I mean, is there a voice in your head? Is there a delivery from Eric Bana or from Jennifer Connelly or from Sam Elliott? Is there a delivery that they could give you of the words in this script with a different director that would actually live up to our expectations?
Sure. I think these are great actors, and I think that they easily could do it well with the script that made sense.
And that's exactly my point, that I think that another director would hear this.
I don't think it's the director. I don't think so. Yes, because I agree. Because
I'm starting to see why we're taking over.
Do you see what I did there?
Because you guys can't stand to be on the same podcast together. All right, I get it.
Because it's an Ang Lee, because Ang Lee is directing this James Schamus script, and he and James have been working together forever. And I think that their collaboration of creating this movie made a movie that they wanted to make, but it's not the Hulk movie that needed to be made. I don't know.
Can I throw a wrench? Yeah. Can I throw a wrench into that?
Sure.
The transitions.
Yeah.
I love it though.
Okay, wait. Here's what I want to tell you. This is okay. Here's one of my points. 15:06. Go to the 15 minutes 6 second mark. Okay. Here's what happens.
We still haven't seen a Hulk at this point.
Okay, no, exactly. Bruce and Betty are having a conversation, right? Because they're working in the lab. Bruce looks at her with all I can say is a creepy 1,000-yard stare. Transition into Betty into the shot where an iBook is matted and the iBook comes out right under his nose. So now he looks 1,000 times creepier. And now she's in the shot and he's just looking at her and I was uncomfortable. Like I literally sat there and went,
yeah,
dude, what are you doing? What was that? And it happens again and again in the movie.
I'm going to say what Ang Lee would say is that's a win. Mm-hmm. Yes, he made you feel. And look, I think that may be the third time I've made Rob bow his head over the course of this.
It made me feel like I got to lock my wife and daughter up.
Well, if you ever watch the Ice Storm, make sure that you're alone.
Smart. I want to say again, controversial position. This movie is edited and cut together aggressively comic-y, and I am here for it. I loved everyone, all of the split screen and the weird matted transitions. I thought they were hysterical.
I'm a fan of that as well. I thought that was great. But once again, it didn't feel like it came from a different movie is what it feels like, because you have this dramatic thing back and forth. I love Josh Lucas's death, like freeze frame with the fire. I mean, it's fantastic. And then they'll cut to Hulk staring at a bush for 2 minutes. Like it's the two things are so incongruous. They just do not match up in the same movie. And it's like when you have like, look, it's Lycan now. The reaction shot of Hulk. Zoom in on Lycan, Hulk. Like, okay, this is not Terrence Malick. Like, calm down.
Even Hulk needs a mindfulness minute, you guys.
Make no mistake. This movie has the greatest multi-camera shot of a cargo helicopter convoy. No mistake, right? It's the greatest. But there is one of those multi-camera shots they do later on where he's like escaping the facility or whatever. There's a shot of General Ross. They got two Sam Elliots. One of them strokes his chin. The other doesn't. And I went, what's happening?
There's even a moment with a triple reaction from Ross. Like when 3 shots of him, he's doing something different in every shot of like head in hands, hand on chin, looking off into distance. Like, okay, so which is the real one? Which is happening?
Yes. That's kind of an Ang Lee thing, right? Because he is a deeply introspective guy. And I when you see his movies that are tonally more in alignment to his vision, like those kinds of tropes work really well for him, because you get this feeling like, okay, now we get kind of the head and the heart experience, and we see how those are manifested in different cuts and different angles. And for me, that does work. It's weird here to I couldn't, it's some of that stuff I couldn't quite adjust to,
but how do you even do like scenes like, okay, like, I mean, laugh out loud scene is when Nick Nolte shows up as the janitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Betty leaves the office,
yeah,
and she's like, "Oh, hey, where's Benny?"
Uh-huh.
And Nick Nolte goes, "Benny's dead."
Yeah, and also the fact they shot it from behind, like it's supposed to be a surprise, and that's Nick Nolte.
And Betty goes to the Benny's dead. This is her response. Oh, nice to meet you.
Guess I'm not getting that cookware back.
What did he say anything about my $5?
What's happening?
I feel like I want to defend this movie because I really don't think it's as bad as we're making it out. But then you say things like that, and I'm like, that is in there.
Well, I mean,
it's
really hard to defend Hulk dogs. I mean, in terms of action sequences.
They're from the comics. He wasn't in movie invention. And I don't know. They make me laugh because it's like it's one of the
Hulk has fought a lot of ridiculous things over the years.
He has.
Some of them should be kept to the comic pages.
I think that was actually a really funny thing to throw in here, because the fact that one of them is a poodle. I mean, come on. They're laughing at that. I mean, it's so funny. Yeah. It's so ridiculous.
It's grown on me over the years.
And when he kills them, the exploding green mist. Yeah. What was that all about?
Right. What is that?
Which doesn't hit her face, even though the windshield's basically gone.
It doesn't.
Right, yeah.
No.
Oh, I didn't get that at all.
I also don't understand her motivations in that. Like, that was her hero moment, is shutting off the car. She's like, you know what? I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay and watch this happen. Why?
It was just, morbid fascination. I don't know.
I guess so. Like, she wasn't, she's a scientist. She wasn't even taking notes. Come on.
Taking pictures or whatever, yeah.
I have a comic question I need somebody to straighten out for me.
Okay.
Let's talk about
I'll try.
Nanomeds. And the relationship to comic history, please.
The 2000s. Yeah, the 2000s were just loaded with nano everything. That was the go-to factor. No, the origins of like the Hulk originally had nothing to do with any type of nanotech or even any biotech. It was about weapons. Because, original Stan Lee just read an article about gamma rays. He's like, well, that sounds neat. Gamma rays, made a note to himself and then just threw it in, not really doing any research because at the time, it was just about cranking out the issues. Bruce Banner was a bomb developer. He was developing the next atomic bomb, which was the gamma bomb. And so when he saw a kid in his jalopy, like an Archie type, bebopping around on the thing, he ran out and threw the kid into the pit because that's going to help in a nuclear explosion. And it explodes and it irradiates him, and that's how he becomes Hulk. But he becomes the Hulk by being a hero. And so that's one of my problems with this one, is that they changed that intent. And this one, that there's a father-son, there's a genetic component, there's a thing, and then he sort of sacrifices himself, to save the random dude who just disappears from the movie shortly after he gets his life saved. It's changing that changes how the Hulk sort of reacts, and then he sort of becomes reactionary through the rest of it, where the other one, this was definitely an intent.
I think that's a really great thing to point out, and why this movie is lampooned and sort of unforgivable in what they do to the Hulk origin story, because I'm all about like taking liberties with origin stories and like have some fun with them. But this one, I sort of feel the same way I do when Zack Snyder had Superman break a neck. Right? Like that breaks a fundamental, like a core character element for me personally that is I don't want to say untouchable. Like everything is, you can play with everything, but that's one that broke an identity of Superman that was core to who I understood him to be. And this one,
and you can see Rob. The listeners can't see Rob smiling because he knows how much I have gone on the same point about Man of Steel and how fundamentally it misses the point of Superman. This is not that big of a swing and miss, but right. I would agree with you totally. Yeah. It absolutely.
And I disagree with Kyle, but I'm still friends with him. So both of you as well.
Well, it's. I mean, I'm curious about that point though, Pete, because I mean, it feels like they are doing largely what the TV show did. Like it feels like, and this is something I think you guys will talk about a lot in the Incredible Hulk. Is as you're breaking it down minute by minute, is how much of it is pulling from the TV show, how much of it is pulling from the comics. Because I think there's a lot of the TV show in a lot of different kind of stylistic choices and decisions that they are pulling into that film and this film. And I think the kind of decision to kind of have the way that he kind of, gets irradiated here, it feels a little bit more from the TV show. And it's hard to judge them too strongly on the whole thing with his dad, because that did get written in the 80s, kind of the whole backstory with Brian Banner, which, I'm not as familiar with, but I know it's there. And so I feel like they are kind of mixing a lot of little bits and pieces of Hulk history into the origin story. While at the same time I say that, I do completely agree with you. I'm not a fan of this version of it.
There are ways you can do Hulk, and like I'm not a Hulk purist by any means, because I've watched the television show, I've watched the animated show, I've watched the kids animated show. I mean, I've seen all versions. There are ways to tell the Hulk story that's Jekyll and Hyde. There are ways to tell the Hulk story that's Frankenstein's monster. And in Peter David's run, he did all of them. Like he examined a bunch of different psychological things. That was where Smart Hulk is from his run too, because there became a point where it was like, well, what if we tried this too? When we see that then play out in the latest Avengers movie. So there are ways to do it, but yeah, for this one, it was a miss for me, just because it seems like he's such the victim in this, because it's all dad.
Yeah, that's really it for me, because as soon as you make the core villain dad, then you lose the mystique and the mythos of the man versus technology. Right. And that's to me what is central to Hulk. And for a big budget, like a movie like this, introducing the father-son element, I think does a disservice to the character in pop culture. And when this thing is going to be a major stake in the ground, spending, $100 million on it, it's a little bit unfair to the character is all.
Even though they did it in the comics before, you're right, because the bulk of people who are familiar with this Hulk story aren't necessarily familiar with that storyline.
It would be equivalent to starting a Hulk franchise with Professor Hulk, right? I mean, that it's just unfair to the character to start with that, because you miss so much of what makes...
This is actually my main complaint with most of the X-Men movies, because whenever they introduce a character, they're introducing the character from 10 years down the line of that character. And so, like, when they show up, it's like, well, but you're missing everything that took them to get them to that point.
Well, yeah, and it's always tricky, because comic book characters are such interesting beasts anyway, because no matter what point in time they started, like Tony Stark, for example, he fits his time of when he was kind of birthed in the comics, but they kind of keep finding ways to update it as they go along. And even though, he's been in comics for decades now, his age really hasn't changed. And so the story kind of has to keep evolving and everything. And that's, I certainly get that and appreciate it. But you're right. I think there are elements of those origins that they are always smart to bring in. And maybe that's why Spider-Man is such a success, because they really kind of keep going back to kind of the core elements of that character, and with Uncle Ben and everything. And it really helps solidify kind of the simple origin of the character.
I think it helps if you really do that hero's journey. That's what's missing in this, because the hero's journey is really, really conflicted. I will say that by the time I got to the end of the movie, I was rooting for Ross because everyone was fairly unlikable. The dad is a monster. The scene where she goes to his house, and there's a weird shot where you think he's getting a rag with a chemical on it, and he's gonna, I don't know, right?
Right.
And you're like, okay, dude, you're dead to me. You're done, right? Banner's the guy, he's got this, they talk about the nightmare of him choking her out. And then he, the creepy scene where he picks her up as a little girl, and you're like, okay, I'm out. You're done. Yeah. It just absolutely, there were so many, they made every character in this unlikable.
All right. So here's a dare for everybody. Can we come around? Rob, I would like you to start. Can we come around and just say one thing about this movie that you passionately liked?
Oh wait, I have
And it can't be the opening credits because I already had that.
It can't be the transitions. We already talked about that too. You got to go through
gotta be new.
and find something.
I've got three.
Outstanding.
Number
three.
one.
Okay.
Wow.
Number one. Greatest comeback ever by a villain. Glenn, I'm going to write a book. That book's called When Stupid Ideals Happen to Smart Penniless Scientists.
That's a great line.
That is a great line.
I mean, that's a horrible book.
I don't know which of the three screenwriters wrote it, but kudos.
That was a great line, right? Second thing is when she goes to Banner Dad's house, she passes Fillmore's house from Cars. There's like it's Fillmore's house. It's the metal military warehouse, and it's got like the psychedelic stuff and the flowers and everything.
Okay.
I thought that was amazing.
Okay.
And I also love the scene at the end when he's battling the tanks. He looks at the final tank, and the guys in the tank just go, and they just kind of melt inside the tank. He takes the gun and points it directly to the guy in the pilot's jet. I was like, that's funny.
That was funny. And I love just the handling that close up.
That's into mine.
Yeah.
My favorite thing would be that fight too. That desert Hulk versus tanks in the desert. Yeah, I think that's some of ILM's best stuff they did. I think some of the best effects in the movie. And it's because it excels the story. And the only time the Hulk has any character is in that scene. And also, like, he pulls the barrel off of the one tank and then walks around and he's sort of like hitting it in his hand. I was like, that's like the first like human type thing of we've seen the personality this whole time where he's not just running or screaming at some people.
All right, I got a few. Despite what you say, and no matter how much fun you're going to make of me forever now, I still love the Gamma Dogs, and the fight with them. It makes me laugh out loud every time I watch it. I'm sure that's not what they're going for, but because of that, it ends up working for me.
Ang Lee somewhere is saying, "Wait, you laughed at that?"
Yeah. Okay, so that's one. Josh Lucas, I think, is a fantastic Glenn Talbot, and I can't imagine they would ever pull anything from this film into the MCU. But if there was one thing, I would love to see him. And of course, he's dead, so it doesn't make any sense. But still, he really just kind of did a great job as that character. So I really enjoyed that. And then a character moment that I think worked really nicely for it fit for Ang Lee, it fit for Hulk. I don't know. I really liked it when Hulk flees the desert base and he's running and he starts doing his Hulk leaps and he's kind of jumping. And there's a moment where he lands on the sand dunes and kind of rolls down a little bit to get himself back up and take off again. There's something about that just felt so kind of real. And I just really enjoyed that little moment there.
I think, Andy, that's what I would pull out too. It's that whole sequence. I think they nailed Hulk travel in this movie, right?
Yes,
the jumping,
absolutely.
They just nailed it. And what better director to nail that kind of travel around the world than Ang Lee? I mean, this is some of the best stuff in this movie when Hulk is jumping around from scenic location to scenic location and everything sort of slows down and you have the wind and the character model of Hulk when he's in the air and you have this, I don't know, it's like a 4-second sequence where Hulk is flying and he's using his hands to kind of guide him against the wind. And it is just like, it is every bit Crouching Hulk, Hidden Dragons. Like it just feels so good to me and so authentically Hulk. Like I think they just nailed it. They got it just right. I think all of those battle sequences there are a real dance between patience and silence and violence. And I think the way he navigates those action sequences is superb. And it's sequences like that I think give, it elevates this movie beyond what it has become lampooned to be. And the Gamma Dogs, I'm with you, Andy. I had fun with the Gamma Dogs. I love making fun of the Gamma Dogs more than I love like fighting on behalf of them. So that's not going to change. But I do have a good time with the Poodle. And Danny Elfman's score is fantastic. Already said the editing is amazing. The way the frog explodes. I'm going to drop the mic on the frog explosion. That was horrible. And their reactions to it, pure science. Oh, get another frog.
I think my favorite line in the movie is afterwards where I can't remember the exact line, but where Jennifer Connelly is basically saying, well, Betty Ross says, if there's ever a plague of frogs,
Oh, we'll be the ones that come. Yeah.
Can we have some commentary on Jennifer Connelly's Betty Ross? Are we in favor or are we not?
I think Jennifer Connelly is fantastic in everything she does.
Yes.
I've loved her since The Rocketeer. I think she's great, but and she is, I think, doing exactly what she was asked to do, which is play it at the same level as everyone else. I think she's the one who comes across the most human of the whole thing. I mean, Sam Elliott and his mustache pretty much playing the same note all the way through. That's what he's hired to do, and he did a great job of it. You can see Josh Lucas is having some fun, and who knows what planet Nick Nolte came from, but the. Well, I think according to John Hodgman, Nick Nolte is actually Quetzalcoatl in human form. So.
In this movie, that
finally makes sense.
I have to say, like that final,
I think
Jennifer Connelly is. I think she's exceptional. I think she's just great. They caught her just right before bed in every scene.
Well, the thing about her though is she carries an intelligence, and that's what I love about Jennifer Connelly. And I think it'll be an interesting thing to look at Betty in The Incredible Hulk with Liv Tyler, because I'm not saying that she doesn't carry intelligence, but I think Liv Tyler carries emotion a lot more, and I think Jennifer Connelly definitely carries more of that intelligence. And it's really interesting to kind of look at Betty Ross through those two different spectrums because of the way that she was largely written, especially in the beginning when it was just such a kind of typically sadly written female character of the time. Just always, daddy, just running around the base and just upset at her dad and everything. It was a little frustrating. And so it's interesting to see how she's portrayed here. And actually, I have a question, and I don't know if you guys know it. When did it seem that Betty all of a sudden, because in both films, she's kind of estranged from her father. She's no longer talking to him, and it's just, the relationship is very forced. Is that something that happened at some point in the comic books? Because she was always with her dad in the comics, at least all the Hulk stuff that I've read. I haven't read all of it, but was that a thing that happened, or is it something that kind of was birthed here in this film?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, it was in some, they sort of have, just like you say, Tony Stark is always like, he was caught in Vietnam, then he was caught in Korea, then he was caught in Afghanistan. Like the events have moved a little bit. At one point it was he was never there, so it was just like the gruff guy who would come home, and he was always on deployments and things. So they were estranged that way. And then there was that he sided, he basically sent the army after Bruce. And so that was the big split point of like, how that was my boyfriend, and why couldn't you try and help him instead of trying to kill him? And so there's been a couple of things. And of course, eventually she becomes Red She-Hulk. So, stay around the Hulk long enough and you're going to get turned into something.
All right. Yeah.
Even Ross got to be a Hulk for a while.
Exactly. Speaking of Ross, I just have to complain a little bit. I love Sam Elliott. You're right. He's very one note here. But is it just me, or did they trim his mustache like, half an inch too short over his lip? It was so distracting. And when he curls his mouth, as he does sometimes, it made it look crooked. Yep. And every time I was looking at him, I'm like, what is wrong with his mustache? It doesn't look right. It was so distracting every time I stared at him.
You're absolutely right.
Way too much skin between there. Yeah.
Well, I don't see anyone in the makeup department specifically hired for mustache. At least they weren't credited for it.
It might be involved facial hair wrangling. That's sometime a credit. Yeah, you might search for that.
I would say
they need to bring the people in from Tombstone. I missed Tombstone.
I was going to say, which is the better mustache? Would it be Tombstone or would it be Big Lebowski? Pretty good mustache in both.
I'm going to go Tombstone.
I can see the Tombstone one working with Thunderbolt Ross. I can't. A little too sloppy, I think. On the Lebowski side.
Speaking of the dad thing, I had trouble with the dad all the way through. The problem is, and I feel like you guys have made fun of him so far, so I don't know where you stand on commitment to role. But the sequence where they're in the chairs facing each other in the sort of like morning show set, like I love Nick Nolte there, possibly more than I've ever loved Nick Nolte. When he does the like the crazy wiggle that he gets.
Has Ang Lee ever given anyone that much freedom in any scene in any movie he's ever done?
Unhinged. Nolte.
Yeah,
And this movie is not
He's
celebrated
definitely
enough
crazy.
as an unhinged Nolte movie.
that's very true.
That is
Very
another
much
great
is.
scene. He does that when he mocks him
Yes.
for crying or
Mhm.
getting angry. That is really great.
I never even knew her name. Well, I'm not going to tell you either. Really? Like, even then? Come on.
But they did go. There's a couple of scenes with Nolte in this, and even Sam Elliott. It's like they're getting into a the conversation really gets into a Christian Bale Batman sound-alike contest
Yeah.
because they really
how rough can we go?
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you what
Yeah.
we're gonna do now. Like, I mean, like, yeah, it's
There is a moment where Bana screams, and he just screams and kind of lurches forward. And I think even Nolte looks around like, where did that come from, man?
Have you read any of the comics? Any of you with these? So they pulled a couple of villains from the Hulk pages, Absorbing Man and Zax, and kind of incorporated them into what happens to David Banner here in the film. Are you guys familiar with those characters at all?
Yeah. The Zax is basically just a, sort of a non-human intelligence kind of thing. So it's just sort of just a monster. But Absorbing Man has been around for a long time, and I think he's been in every animated show Marvel has ever done, no matter what the character. Crusher Creel shows up. He was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, like, he was a recurring one because his powers are incredibly cinematic, as we see in this one, even though they gave the powers to somebody else. The idea, like, he's basically like a big, strong dude who touches stuff and can turn into that. And he has gone all the way up the chain. Like, he's fought Spider-Man, he's fought everybody, and up to when he got a chance, he grabbed Thor's hammer and suddenly became made of Uru, and that was elevated him to a whole different level of people that he could fight then. So yeah, it's been really good. I actually didn't even pick up on it the first time I saw it. It was when I had to have a geekier friend pull aside and go, that was Absorbing Man. I was like, oh, of course it was Absorbing Man. Why did I think of that?
Well, and that speaks to one other thing that I really loved is when he first starts absorbing stuff and he touches that metal and his hand kind of dissolves into it. And the way it moves, it is so cool.
Fantastic.
The way that it's just kind of sliding around like he can't quite get it off. I think that's one of the coolest things.
And with that, Andy, the sound design of that, the metal on metal kind of scraping was gruesome. I love because Absorbing Man's power, it's the constraint with that is he can only be the last thing that he touched. Right. And I've always loved that. It's one of my very favorite. I mean, you say cinematic, truly, like, it is the greatest archetype of superhero-dom, right? It's this incredible ability, this incredible power, and this incredible constraint. Like, you have to have such patience to wield it. And so I think that's one of those characters, like, just being a side character in all of these different properties has always made me a little sad. I'd love to see him given more screen time.
He had a long run on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they still.
But it was always kind of
the end, they kind of made him into like
a dope.
a junkie where he had to touch the stuff.
Exactly. I was not crazy about that arc. Yeah.
I was really hoping with Zax, kind of the lightning guy, that part could have been, because that seemed like a really cool fight for Hulk, right? Fighting electricity, basically. I loved the idea of that. I liked what they did where he kind of zaps him up into the clouds and kind of they fight through the clouds in a series of images that look like comic panels in the sky before they kind of crash land. I liked the idea of that. It looked really cool and it's beautiful just to look at, but it's like that took everything out of that fight that I wanted in the fight.
Yeah, it loses a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I mean it's a good trope in terms of that, because that's what you do is you take the hero and you put him against a villain that they can't defeat using their main ability. So you have the Hulk give him somebody he can't hit, and suddenly it becomes a very different kind of fight.
Right, exactly.
One nod to the bunker. The very early Hulk, the first 6 issues, right? He becomes the Hulk and he goes and he finds this underground bunker, and that's where he lives, and he has his manservant run errands for him, and he's kind of like Dracula, right? And he kind of sleeps and anyway, so this movie, I think they found the bunker and it belonged to the Umbrella Corporation. Like, I have never seen more screens devoted to where people are on this hive map of underground caves. I thought that was an incredible waste of military resources and also really beautiful.
Well, this whole movie is a waste of military resources. I mean, like, I understand that this whole movie takes place over like a week. maybe 2 weeks. But the first time they fight him, they shoot a bunch of times. It doesn't work. They're like, "Sir, what should we do? Have we tried more bullets?" Okay, well then definitely more. I mean, when they're at the end, they're still shooting him. It's like, guys,
Yeah.
like I know that like the military does not known for their creativity, but you did the foam thing. We could try the foam thing again. It worked pretty well.
That held him, right?
Right. Oh, just like how about bigger bullets? No, it's the bullets thing is just not working, guys.
Great sequence that I don't think I've seen in any of the other Hulk stuff, which is when he first he beats up Josh Lucas, right? Throws him outside the house, and then they fire all of the bullets at him, the aforementioned many bullets, and he actually gets more angry and grows bigger.
Yeah,
that was really cool. What a nice Hulk touch, you know?
The sock, you saw the limits of his
sock limit,
and then they're just
the HSL, the Hulk sock limit. I think was fully tested. Good moment.
Yeah, and even saw somebody made this point online, so I won't take credit for it. But when the Hulk is there and comes out and looks up, and the weapon they fire at him that covers around that thing, that's the Jericho, right? I mean, it goes up in the air, it disperses, it covers
totally
the entire
looks like
area.
that,
I'm like,
yeah.
yes, that's the Jericho.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the villain here. We've got Dad, who, he ends up kind of taking on a couple different comic book character villains. There was a possibility in one of the earlier scripts that it would be 3 guys who would have been somehow turned into giant man insects.
Oh. Okay.
Gamma irradiated insect DNA. 3 convicts who end up getting kind of different. It's one of those things. They each get a different type of bug, DNA on them. So one is more.
Would they come in riding the Gamma dogs then?
And one of them figure set for there. Funko would go crazy for that.
And one of them is Jeff Goldblum. Please.
Oh, so how would that work? I mean, there are issues with Dad. There are issues with kind of the villain. He turns into the rock monster and the water monster and everything. Does that work better though? Would
that be in place of the Gamma Dogs?
No, there would be no Dad. That would have been the villain. These 3 convicts were the bad guys. Would you guys prefer that, or do you like this better?
I think, okay, so if you do the events of this movie up until the midpoint and then have that happen, then the Hulk gets to be a hero. Because in this whole thing, he doesn't really get to be a hero except the one time he saves the jet. And then obviously he kind of saves the world, but no one really knows that just because they popped the big green glowy thing and it all went away. And then he's either dead or gone as far as they're concerned. So I think that would have been good to have him actually be the Godzilla thing where he's saving the city from the other monsters.
Well, and what a great setup for, the superhero lore, right? That this is a conflicted relationship that we have with our heroes. And this is the first one we're going to see. And it's going to set the table for a lot of conflicted relationships to come.
And obviously you have to have a scene where a little kid walks up to Hulk and reaches out to him as he turns around, and there's a quiet moment as the two of them almost touch hands. And Denny Elfman tinkles away in the background.
And the sun's getting really low in the sky.
That's right.
Right.
Which they have that moment when he shows up in the cabin in the woods. That almost happens.
It almost happens.
No, that's better because I just thought that it's not Nick Nolte's fault. It's just the character, the way that story is told of his father is horrible.
So,
we even find out that in the end, like when they tease the whole opening of what happened to the mother.
Right.
Well, yeah, that scene where he comes out with the knife and that's horrifying.
Yeah. He's gonna. So I need to, since I have all you guys here, I didn't understand that part. Now I might have briefly lost consciousness watching this movie. My brain just fervently trying to get me away from it. But what the heck happened that day? Because the day that Bruce's mother died. So David Banner gets fired, and then Ross loses stuff and breaks all his stuff. And so he realizes, if I just leave it, then my kid is going to get weird and strange and no one comes up. So I have to destroy this thing. And so he goes to their place and he's going to kill the kid, but instead he ends up killing the mom to kill the kid. and then something green explodes, and Ross leaves his daughter to eat ice cream with a stranger. I missed something. Was there something else going on? Was there like a bomb that was set to go off? I don't know.
Well, I think it was
green explosion.
David Banner did it.
Yeah, it was David's experiment.
So
he set it off basically, or I don't know if he was trying to destroy his work or something. It's not explained very well, but I think
because he wasn't weapons, he was a geneticist. Like, why would he have a bomb?
Well, I don't think it was a bomb, but whatever it was he was doing created some reaction. Because it was
he overloaded all the switches and then
it's
took
all
the
about
switches.
switches.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's poorly executed. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to what happens or why it happens or did it affect other people, because it looks they shoot it in a way where it feels like 50s atomic bomb footage, where you're watching into the old little village in the middle of the desert as an atomic bomb blows up and it destroys everybody. I mean, it's totally shot just like that. It's just so you're assuming, does everybody get irradiated by the green cloud that just went off?
Do they get turned to dust? And the only reason that we have David and Bruce left today is because they had been sort of prepared, like they had the whatever
but
inside.
Betty was there. Betty was there.
Oh, you're right. Betty was there. Now it's
and
totally
her dad.
foiled.
It's like And then that's another aspect that I really didn't like, the fact that they all ended up kind of so conveniently coming from the same childhood.
What are the odds?
And do we? I really thought when they go in the bedroom, when he takes his mother in the bedroom, like you never know what that is. Like, what does he do? He's just like, honey, we got to kill the kid.
Right.
Honey, sit down. You're gonna need to sit down.
And she goes. No, why? What?
Yeah.
You know how sometimes our sun turns a little green? Well, clearly.
Right. Or what? Like, does it start with that? Is that what he's trying to sell? Or is he trying to sell? Or is he trying to kill her to get her out of the way? Or is he just saying a bomb's going to go off and then we're going to eat oatmeal and I want it hard? And she disagrees.
And everyone's going to die.
We're going to have, like, it just doesn't, it's unclear.
My understanding is that he wants to kill the kid. And she tries to stop him, accidentally gets stabbed, and then stumbles off into the desert to die while he runs off to destroy all of his work, and that causes the green explosion.
Leaving, by the way, in that scene, leaving the child alone.
They both parents are terrible parents, because dad runs off leaving Bruce alone, and General Ross runs off leaving his daughter alone. And then Bruce, in her dreams, is the one who picks her up. It's very odd.
And then tries to kill her. So, okay, you know what other scene I really laughed at? When you just said the 50s like nuclear fear propaganda, I did laugh at this because this just, I don't know why this came to me. The scene at the end where he pops up in downtown San Francisco towards the end, and they're going to all the different shots of all the military, the police, and everyone pointing the gun at him, and she's coming down the mountain. I literally had this moment where I expected him to the Hulk to look down at her and go, "Hulk, go. You stay. No following." It just was a super Iron Giant moment. I just made me laugh.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah. But I'd forgotten that the end of the movie has him in some vague South American country.
Fascinating.
Speaking of the language too.
With the worst fake beard ever.
That was terrible.
Right.
Terrible fake beard.
It is.
But knowing that Incredible Hulk starts with Bruce on the run in a South American country, I was like, oh, okay, they really did sort of like lightly make it a sequel. They, a little bit. It was kind of tied in because Hulk in the jungle is a kind of a nice visual.
It unfortunately, I mean, and I'm sure you guys will talk about this quite a bit, but I mean, Universal did not move quick enough getting their sequel off the ground that they had been wanting to do. And so Marvel ended up getting the film rights back, and that's when they began. And so they didn't, it's frustrating because it's kind of a sequel, but it also is very much a reboot. That's how they kind of saw it. And, once Edward Norton gets involved in projects, he really likes to kind of throw his creative hand into it and muck things up or make them better, or however you see it. I think that he and Louis ended up really kind of, just kind of doing a film that I think doesn't feel, I don't know, it's tricky. It feels like it could be a sequel, I guess that may be why it works, because it feels like it could be a sequel. It doesn't necessarily feel like a straight up reboot. It's not an origin story. So I think to that end, maybe it works in both ways.
I don't know. I'm coming around to the idea that though we have the technology, I don't know that a solo Hulk film is possible to make it really be that good. Like, I think it's just it worked as a television show. It worked in an ensemble, but like I'm not really I like Mark Ruffalo's version of it, and even if they decided to revert Smart Hulk back to Flash thing, I guess I just don't really see that there's a good way of doing it and have people be satisfied with it.
I'll be interested to see. Well, yeah, it's earned. I will be interested to see what they do with Smart Hulk. I think that they've just turned the archetype on its ear. Right now, he's got a whole new conflict, and there is a lot to explore in this particular thing. I hope they don't give up on it, because I would love to see what Ruffalo is able to do with a character like this. I think there is a lot of headroom to play.
I mean,
I'm curious how much more they're planning on doing. Like, I haven't heard anything. Like, has Mark Ruffalo said he's going to do much more? I mean, I know She-Hulk is coming.
Yeah, that's the X factor out there.
Right.
So
that might be where
in that, or because he's the one that we have not really heard one way or another.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of them have said we're done, or we're out here, or
we're moving to Disney
Marvel
Plus.
doesn't want anything to do with them, But I mean, like we've been on Road to Infinity, we've been revisiting all the Spider-Man movies, so we've been going back through, and I would say it took them 5 tries to make a great Spider-Man movie. The first Sam Raimi one was a solid movie, but like Homecoming is better, and they had 2 tries to make a Hulk movie, and the first Ant-Man movie was better than it. I mean, at a certain point, you kind of go, yeah, maybe it just doesn't work. Like, like they did how many 4 seasons of the series, and it was great, and that's what people remember because they're still making references to it, and yet here we are with the Hulk as a team player and better than he's been in his solo movies. So
let me ask you this: on the Hulk green scale, where does the color of this Hulk rate?
I will say there's no paint getting rubbed off.
True. Yeah. Very true.
All right, there we go.
I mean, I love that Lou Ferrigno makes an appearance here. It's great seeing him. But boy, there were some shots very clearly in the TV movies when we were looking at those where you could just tell like the wrong thing happened and he's walking around and there's a big chunk of green that's just not on him anymore. And it's like,
but he's really, I did not realize how bright he was in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and they talked about that. I mean, it was a very difficult process. And they even said, because this was really one of the first big kind of CG characters like this. And they said it was really frustrating because when they would make him look like normal colored skin, he looked really good. But when they would paint him green, they really couldn't ever get it to kind of quite look right. And
get down to my swamp.
Yeah, it was really frustrating for them. And so I think it was a good learning ground, I guess, to that extent for ILM to play around and start figuring out what they needed to do so that by the time the Incredible Hulk rolled around, they, everybody had a much better sense as to how to do it right.
Well, that Hulk is cut. So clearly he's been doing a lot more, to try and get more definition, less bulk,
right.
Right.
Long and lean muscles.
A little more,
lean.
A little more targeting the specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this
that
also...
Brad Pitt and Troy look.
Oh wait, speaking of that, I will say it made me laugh. Why is the one scene where he's in the cab when he fights off the dogs and he loses his pants?
Oh, this is a good story, actually.
I mean, because
there is a reason.
Is it
Ang
really?
Lee wanted him naked. Ang Lee said, like, I want him naked. I want a naked fight. And the other was like, whoa, no. Like, Hulk doesn't get naked. So that was the compromise, is he can wear briefs and they get ripped off during the fight.
Wow.
So, but and they say, and actually they pointed this out in the, I think it was the Everything Wrong with Hulk video. And there's in that fight through the Hulk dogs, and this would be a great note to end on. In the through the Hulk dogs, he punches one of the dogs in the nards, and so some ILM technician had to animate Hulk dog nard.
Nice.
Of course.
What'd you do today, honey?
Yeah, right.
That is the place. That's the place to end on this movie. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody, it's a movie that made money at the box office.
It did?
Yeah. Oh, this was one of the top films of its year. Absolutely was. Yeah, it was a big success.
And everyone except Rob has seen it.
Yeah, apparently. It's a problematic film. It's interesting to look at. There are things that work in it, as we've said, but it's a rough ride. It can be rough, and it was rougher for me this time, more so than it had ever been before. And that's I don't know. It's kind of frustrating, but I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys end up doing with The Incredible Hulk as that one continues.
We are very excited about you guys coming in and taking over the season and bringing your expertise and commentary to the Marvel Movie Minute, and thrilled to be working with you, and can't wait to see what happens as the season unfolds.
It's going to be a good time. We're looking forward to it. We've already started putting some stuff together, seeing how it works. Obviously, we'll be a little bit different from what you guys did, but hopefully we'll do you proud. And we won't break what we meant to. We won't.
I was just going to say, and try not to break anything. Yeah,
as long as you leave lots of room for Rob to lower his head in prayer or embarrassment. I mean, whatever.
No, we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great season, and it's going to start probably in about a month. A little, because of everything, all the shifts, we're running a little bit behind, but it'll probably be February when these episodes start dropping. So everybody keep tuning in and enjoy. And thank you guys for taking on this monumental task of talking about The Incredible Hulk 1 minute at a time, and for joining us here on the show to talk about Hulk today, everyone's favorite.
Puny human.
Until next time, true believers.